Good evening. Can't promise that my speech will be as eloquent or as fluid. All right, well, let me start. Good evening, comrades, brothers and sisters of planet Earth. It's a pleasure to see you all here as we gather to celebrate and discuss the importance of observing Juneteenth as a truly revolutionary celebration and to commemorate the insurmountable contributions made by African Americans. I describe Juneteenth as a revolutionary celebration because it marks the end of the Second American Revolution on June 19, 1865. And although it's referred to as the Civil War, this period in American history, with the abolition of bondage slavery, opened up a whole new set of social questions, such as the fight for feminism, women's rights, workers' rights as well. Pardon me. And then those questions I'll actually go in a bit further in depth, further into the talk. Now, as I outline the economic and political issues of the Civil War that also occurred during this time, the main purpose of this talk, though, is to elaborate and provide with as much clarity as possible that those fighting in the struggle for black liberation, as well as those fighting for a workers' revolution, must stand together in solidarity as the proletariat in the struggle for freedom against the oppressive nature of capitalism. I'd like to start my speech off with a quote by Malcolm X. It'll take black nationalism to bring about the freedom of 22 million Afro-Americans in this country, where we have suffered colonialism for the past 400 years. America is just as much a colonial power as Britain ever was. America is as much a colonial power as France ever was. In fact, America is more of a colonial power because she's a hypocritical colonial power behind it. And what do you call second-class citizenship? Well, that's colonization. Second-class citizenship is nothing but 20th century slavery. And no other government in the world is there second-class citizenship. They just have citizens and slaves. Now, to build off that idea of the second-class citizenship, here in America, we often see that mass incarceration and how that applies to the prison industrial complex. And what does this have to do with the Civil War? Well, let's consider this. In today's America, 1 out of every 100 adults are incarcerated or in prison, totaling a population of just over 2.3 million people. That's a quarter of the entire planet's prison population out of all the countries in the world. Out of those 2 million people, African Americans are over 900,000 of the total prison population. And a 2001 estimate projected that 1 out of every 6 African Americans have been incarcerated, a rate projected to increase once every 3. This is also a coinciding factor for the ever-increasing rate of African American female imprisonment as well. These numbers are accompanied by an ever-increasing amount of private prisons being built, such as mentioned before. And the private prison industry is a multi-billion-dollar a year business that thrives out of outsourcing prison labor. This concept was first introduced in the Reconstruction period after the Civil War, much of it through the Black Codes. Peter Cameo describes these codes in the following passage. The Black Codes, passed by the state governments organized immediately after the war under the so-called Reconstruction policy of President Andrew Johnson, were the first attempts to establish a caste labor system. Though these laws varied state to state, in general they did the following. They declared any black without employment to be a vagrant who can be arrested and hired to the highest bidder. Blacks were forbidden to leave jobs before the expiration of the period they had been hired for, and some states authorized employers to inflict corporal punishment on black employees. In addition, the codes deprived blacks of the right to vote, sit on juries, or give testimony against whites. And you can see a lot of these parallels with modern day laws such as stop and frisk, and often too with use and employment of the caste labor system within the prison industrial complex itself. As workers, they get no rights as far as no union protection, overtime, pension, vacation, benefits, social security, no health and safety protection. And they make parts for military weapons manufacturers such as BAE Systems. They also make products for several corporations that we shop at each and every day. for like such as AT&T, Target, and other multinational corporations as well. And once a person is branded a convicted felon, they are then considered a second-class citizen. Often a felony charge results in a temporary or even permanent loss to the right to vote. In an article written by Loic Waquan, he states, as of 1997, nearly one black man in 6 nationwide was excluded from the ballot box due to a felony conviction, and more than 1/5 of them were prohibited from casting a ballot in Alabama, Connecticut, Florida, Iowa, Mississippi, Mexico, Texas, Washington, and Wyoming. And another quote from that very same article says, "The prison system, it serves only to warehouse the precarious and proletarialized fractions of the black working class." So what that basically means is that pardon, let me catch myself here. Is that through racist laws such as, or policies such as the war on drugs, you often see a targeting of black and Latino communities. Often, if you refer back to maybe the imagery of the time during the war on drugs, when the Reagan and Bush administration ramped up these efforts to incarcerate people for nonviolent drug offenses, it was often pictures portraying blacks throughout the ghettos doing the drugs and in these conditions, thus giving them a picture, a stereotypical picture of how drug use was, when in reality it was a widespread problem that affected not only blacks but white people as well, who actually more often use the drugs more so and even sell the drugs as well. And although the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments were ratified into the Constitution and granted African American suffrage, the main aim of the amendments was so that the capitalists could gain hegemony in the northern states. But once they gained political control of the South, after co-opting the black vote and the political support, the power was consolidated and the capitalists just took that away through black codes and Jim Crow laws. And after the Civil War, it seemed as if that oppression based on racism had a chance to end. But that wasn't necessarily the case, because in the interest of the northern capitalists and